A polar bear can weigh 100 pounds, a walrus can weigh 3,000, and somewhere on the edge of the Arctic ice, one of them is about to attack the other. And it isn't the one you'd expect to have the advantage. The Arctic Ocean is home to the largest land carnivore on Earth, the polar bear. Built for a lifetime hunting seals on sea ice, an adult male can stand over 10 feet tall on its hind legs and cover 60 miles in open water without stopping. Its entire body, from its slightly webbed paws to its thick layer of insulating fat, evolved around one job: catching seals at breathing holes in the ice, using patience measured in hours and a final strike measured in a fraction of a second. That patience is its greatest strength on the ice, and its greatest liability once the ice itself starts to disappear. But seals aren't always available, and when the ice starts thinning, when easier prey becomes harder to find, some polar bears turn to a target most predators on Earth would never dare approach: the walrus. The Pacific walrus is one of the most heavily armed animals in the Arctic. Adult males can weigh over 300 pounds, more than twice the weight of even the largest polar bear, and they carry tusks that can grow past 3 feet long, ivory weapons used to fight rivals, haul themselves onto ice, and, when necessary, defend themselves from exactly the kind of predator now stalking them. A single well-placed strike from a walrus tusk can puncture a polar bear's hide and cause fatal internal injuries. This is not a hunt where the predator holds all the advantages. In terms of raw size and weaponry, the walrus is arguably better equipped for a direct fight than the bear is. Most polar bear hunts targeting walrus happen at haul-out sites, stretches of beach or ice where hundreds, sometimes thousands, of walruses gather to rest between feeding dives. These sites can be genuinely massive, with animals packed shoulder to shoulder across the shoreline, using the safety of their sheer numbers as their primary defense against predators. A bear approaching a haul-out site isn't looking for a fair fight with an adult male. It's looking for weakness, a calf separated from its mother, an old or injured individual slower to reach the water, or a moment of chaos where the herd panics and something gets left behind. Approaching too fast, too early, or from the wrong angle almost guarantees failure before the hunt even really begins. That panic itself can be a weapon. When a polar bear charges a haul-out site, the walruses nearest the bear scramble for the water in a stampede, and in the crush of thousands of animals moving at once, calves are sometimes crushed or separated from their mothers entirely. Researchers who have studied these encounters describe polar bears deliberately triggering stampedes for exactly this reason. Not because they can outmuscle an adult walrus in a direct confrontation, but because a chaotic retreat creates opportunities a calm herd never would. In some documented cases, the crush of the stampede itself has caused more walrus deaths, particularly among calves, than the bear's attack ever could on its own. Even so, successful hunts are rare, and dangerous even when they work. Marine biologists studying bear-walrus interactions in places like Svalbard and the Chukchi Sea have documented cases where a bear commits to an attack and is driven off, injured, by the very prey it targeted. Walrus skin itself is nearly 2 inches thick in places, tough enough to blunt claws and teeth that would tear through a seal in seconds. A polar bear attacking a full-grown walrus is gambling significant risk against a payoff that, if it succeeds, is enormous. A single adult walrus can provide more calories than dozens of seals combined, potentially sustaining a bear for weeks. For a bear running low on fat reserves late in the season, that math can be worth the danger. One of the earliest detailed scientific accounts of this behavior came from researchers studying the Bering Sea decades ago, who documented and published direct observations of polar bears successfully killing adult walruses, establishing for the first time in the scientific record that this wasn't just folklore or rare speculation among Arctic hunters, but a genuine, if uncommon, hunting strategy within the polar bear's behavioral range. Since then, similar accounts have accumulated slowly across different parts of the Arctic, each one adding to a picture of a hunt that's rare enough to be notable every time it's documented, but consistent enough across regions to be considered a real, recurring behavior rather than an isolated fluke. This is why walrus hunting isn't a polar bear's default strategy. It's closer to a last resort, reserved for bears in poor body condition, or for years when sea ice retreats early and seal hunting grounds simply aren't accessible anymore. And that's exactly what's happening more often now. As Arctic sea ice continues shrinking earlier each spring and forming later each winter, polar bears are spending more time stranded on land, or forced onto walrus haul-out sites out of necessity rather than preference. Scientists tracking bear body condition across the Arctic have recorded declining average weights over recent decades, a trend directly tied to fewer productive months hunting seals from stable ice. And fewer productive months means more bears eventually forced to weigh the risk of a walrus hunt against the certainty of continued hunger. There's a well-documented case from Wrangel Island in the Russian Arctic, where researchers observed a polar bear repeatedly attempting to isolate walrus calves from a massive haul-out site containing thousands of animals. A hunt that took hours, most of it spent simply waiting and watching for the right moment, since a direct charge into a fully alert herd would end badly for the bear far more often than it would succeed. When the moment came, it lasted only seconds. That contrast defines this hunt more than almost any other predator-prey relationship in the Arctic. Overwhelming patience, followed by a narrow, dangerous window where everything has to go right. Walruses aren't defenseless once a hunt begins either. Adults have been observed forming defensive groups around calves, using their sheer numbers and tusks to discourage a bear from committing to an attack at all. In some encounters, a bear will spend significant time probing the edges of a herd, testing for gaps or weakness, before ultimately backing off without ever making contact. The risk simply outweighing the reward once the herd closes ranks. Researchers have also documented cases where adult female walruses actively charge at approaching bears, using their tusks offensively rather than just defensively, forcing the bear to retreat well before it gets close enough to isolate a calf. Walrus herds also rely heavily on collective vigilance. With so many animals packed into a single haul-out site, it takes only a small number of individuals noticing an approaching bear to trigger alarm behavior across the entire group, barking, shifting, and repositioning that can alert even walruses on the far side of the site, long before the bear is anywhere near them. This kind of group-based early warning system is one of the main reasons successful attacks are so rare in the first place. A lone bear is rarely able to close the final distance undetected against thousands of pairs of eyes, ears, and noses working collectively against it. There's also a strange secondary danger for the polar bear beyond the walrus itself. Haul-out sites are chaotic, crowded environments, and a bear moving through one risks getting trampled in the same stampede it triggered. Wildlife researchers monitoring Arctic coastlines have documented injured and even occasionally killed bears in the aftermath of failed walrus hunts, animals that misjudged the chaos they created and paid for it. Unlike a seal hunt, where the risk to the bear is minimal even on a failed attempt, a walrus hunt carries genuine physical danger regardless of the outcome. Walrus hunting isn't the only unusual prey shift researchers have documented among polar bears adapting to a changing Arctic. There are also scattered records of bears preying on beluga whales and even narwhals trapped in small pockets of open water surrounded by ice, a situation Arctic hunters and researchers call a savsat, where marine mammals become stranded far from the safety of a larger opening in the ice and are forced to surface repeatedly in the same small area to breathe. A bear that finds a savsat can feed for an extended period on animals that, under normal ice conditions, would never come anywhere near a predator built primarily for hunting on solid ground. Behaviors like this reinforce the same underlying pattern, an animal opportunistically expanding its hunting repertoire as its preferred hunting conditions become less reliable. Cubs learn this kind of behavior the same way they learn to hunt seals, by watching. A mother polar bear that successfully targets a walrus haul-out, even unsuccessfully in terms of an actual kill, is still demonstrating a strategy her cubs will carry forward into their own adult hunting behavior. Some researchers believe this is part of why walrus hunting, while still rare overall, appears to be documented more frequently in certain regional bear populations than others. It may function less like instinct and more like a locally transmitted skill, passed down within specific family lines, the same way orcas pass down specialized hunting techniques within their own pods. What makes this relationship worth understanding isn't just the drama of an individual hunt, it's what it represents. The polar bear, an animal that evolved almost entirely around sea ice and seals, is increasingly being forced to test itself against prey it isn't perfectly built to catch, in a habitat that's disappearing faster than the bear can adapt to the change. Every walrus hunt is really a symptom of a much larger problem, a predator running out of its preferred option and improvising against one of the few large animals in its environment capable of genuinely fighting back. Some researchers studying this shift describe it as a preview of what Arctic ecosystems may increasingly look like as sea ice continues to decline. Established predator-prey relationships, built over thousands of years around a stable ice environment, being forced to renegotiate themselves in real time. Polar bears aren't simply switching prey out of curiosity. They're adapting under pressure, testing dangerous new options because the reliable ones are vanishing beneath them, season after season. It's worth remembering that this isn't a hunt the polar bear is winning easily or often. For every documented successful kill, there are far more attempts that end with an injured bear, an empty stomach, and a herd that scattered into the water long before any real danger arrived. That failure rate matters because it's part of the story too. An animal forced into a higher risk, lower success strategy simply because its preferred option keeps disappearing earlier every single year. The polar bear built its entire existence around ice that's vanishing. The walrus, meanwhile, still gathers on the same beaches it always has, in numbers that offer some safety, but also concentrate risk in one place when a hungry bear decides the gamble is worth taking. Neither species changed on purpose. The ice did. And what's left behind is a predator and a prey animal renegotiating a relationship that used to be far rarer than it's becoming now. One hunt, one stampede, one narrow window of opportunity at a time, played out again and again along a coastline that looks less like the one either species evolved for with every passing year.